Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com with a report on Earth Day madness. On Earth Day, the United States is experiencing historic cold, and Joe Biden wants to make it even colder. He's hosting a virtual climate summit from the White House. The last 30 years of climate summits have had no impact on the growth of CO2 in the atmosphere. But this time it'll be different because Sleepy Joe is in charge. Never mind that Biden has been in D.C. for 50 years and that he was in the White House for much of this time. He's promised to cut U.S. emissions 50 to 52% in the next 9 years. China's emissions are skyrocketing, but Joe Biden has promised to cut our emissions back to the levels of the 1950s. Never mind that the U.S. population has more than doubled since the 1950s. In order to achieve Biden's goal, per capita emissions in the United States would have to drop back to 19th century levels. The only way which Biden could accomplish this would be by massively reducing the U.S. population. And he's doing this at the same time he's allowing huge numbers of new illegal immigrants into the country. One of the strategies which the Biden administration is using to lower emissions is to make energy prices unaffordable. Since the election, gasoline prices have skyrocketed up towards $3 a gallon. The last time the average gas price in the United States was $3 a gallon was 7 years ago when Joe Biden was also in the White House. Based on the current trends, we should get to $3 in the next few weeks. But let's get back to talking about Earth Day. The United Nations says human activities are the dominant cause of the observed warming. I agree with them. This statement is completely correct. Let me explain why. The U.S. government released these maps a few days ago showing how the United States has heated up decade by decade since the early part of the 20th century. According to NOAA, in 1901, the United States was cold blue and now we're red hot. They say that the United States used to be about 1 degree below average and now we're about 1 degree above average. This change is definitely due to human activity. It's caused by data tampering from government agencies. This graph shows how NOAA alters the observed U.S. thermometer data. NOAA cools the observed temperatures from the early part of the 20th century by about 1 degree. In recent temperatures, they warm them by about 1 degree above what the thermometers actually measured. This hockey stick of data tampering by NOAA is how they create their fake temperature maps, which make it look like the United States is burning up. The actual thermometer data from NOAA shows no such thing. The 1930s was actually the warmest decade, and there isn't any long-term trend. And if we look at afternoon maximum temperatures, there's actually been a sharp downwards trend over the last 90 years. Afternoons in the United States are much cooler now than they were during the 1930s. These graphs are from the 2018 National Climate Assessment, and they confirm what I was just showing you. Summers used to be much hotter in the United States than they are now. The frequency of hot weather in the United States over the past 60 years has been much lower than it was prior to 1960. Prior to 1960, the United States was much hotter. NOAA wants you to believe that the United States was very cold in 1901. But the United States actually had some of our worst heat waves on record that year. New York Times, June 29, 1901. Heat brings death and much suffering. Chicago sizzles. Boston swelters. June 30th, 1901. New York wilts in protracted heat. Temperature on the street from 98 to 106 in the shade. Many dead and prostrated. July 1st, 1901. The city of Furnace, virtually deserted. July 2nd, 1901. Heat's holocaust in the 5 boroughs. 87 deaths and 178 prostrations. July 3rd, 1901. Heat brings death to over 200 persons. July 4th, 1901. 200 more dead before rain falls. Some states in the Midwest had their longest spell of hot weather during July of 1901. And the record heat of 1901 wasn't just in the United States, it was also occurring in Europe, where they had unprecedented heat. People were dropping dead in the streets in London and they were having a serious drought. In Italy, vineyards shriveled up. Temperatures in Italy reached 109 degrees Fahrenheit or 43 degrees Celsius. NOAA wants you to believe that 1901 was very cold when in fact it was very hot. Same story with 1911. Like 1901, 1911 was also extremely hot. It brought the worst heat wave on record to New England. A July 1911 heatwave killed thousands of New Englanders and sent many over the brink of madness. During 11 hellish days, horses dropped in the streets and babies didn't wake up from their naps. In every major northeastern city, the sweltering heat drove people to suicide. Boston reached 104 degrees, which is still their all-time record. And it was the same story in Europe. During a 70-day-long heat wave in Paris, more than 40,000 people died. Many people died in Germany as well. Noah wants you to believe that 1901 was cold, 1911 was cold, and 1921 was cold as well. But 1921, 100 years ago, was actually the most consistently hot year on record in the United States. The New York Times said that Earth had a fever in 1921, and millions of people in Europe and Asia died during the record heat wave and drought. I could go on for days with examples like these ones showing that the NOAA temperature graphs and maps are not credible. These maps have nothing to do with reality. They're propaganda being used by the government to rewrite history. The government wants to rewrite history in order to demonize fossil fuels. The Biden administration wants people to believe that the burning of fossil fuels is causing the Earth to overheat. There's no truth to this claim, so government agencies are altering the temperature data in order to make it look like it's actually happening. The only way that Biden could cut emissions 50% by the year 2030 would be to wipe out most of the U.S. population. And perhaps that is the plan. History shows us that when government starts talking crazy, they're usually quite serious about their intentions. It would behoove everyone to pay close attention to what the administration is doing. Toto's been pulling back the curtain on this insanity for the past 13 years. You can visit him and Kyrie on the web at realclimatescience.com.